Peace, family. Today I'm going to be giving you a small level of information dealing with what's called the three primary axioms. For those of you who don't know what an axiom is, axiom basically is a naturally stated law of nature. For example, when someone says what goes up must comes down, that's the actual axiom, or a law that, irregardless to what other influences, that will always stand. The three primary axioms and its importance is relative for us understanding how certain things work with us as biological organisms. And of course, there are more naturally stated laws. The reason why we call these the three primary laws or axioms is because it's relative for human beings to be able to know the basics of what they're governed by. So, as you see, I have up here on the board the term axiom. And I wrote, I don't know if you guys can see this clearly, but if not, then I'll basically clarify it one by one. However, I just wrote them all up there on the board. So, when we talk about biology and laws as far as with humans, what we're saying is that there are natural laws that govern us as a physical species, or any biological organism for that matter. And so once when you understand totally these three axioms, it becomes clear as to why we in the conscious community try to do research and delve inside these different sources or mediums that's trying to disseminate teachings to us that we find to be unfactual. So the first axiom or naturally stated law is survive. What that means is that the number one thing that any biological organism is here to do, or anything living for that matter, is to survive. For example, the reason why you breathe is to continue your survival. The reason why we have to eat and drink water is because that will help us continue our survival. The reasons why animals have to hunt for food so that they don't die of starvation is to be able to continue its survival. Everything in nature is moving to the ultimate end of survive, be it protons, electrons, neutrons, the universe, elements, plants, animals, humans, so forth. So the first naturally stated law of nature is survive. That is the one universal purpose of everything that exists. Which brings us to the number two axiom, which states that the purpose of the mind is to acquire and apply knowledge related to survival. What this means is that humans have been given a mechanism that will enable them to be able to acquire information, decipher that information, and use that information to survive. Therefore, in the conscious community, what we ask is, how can you solve a problem realistically with misinformation, right? You can't do what you don't know. And if you have the wrong information, you can't put forth the proper solution, so to speak. So the third axiom is a species remain alive and continue its survival as long as the species remain united. What this is saying is that nature made it to where each species of its kind needs to aid and assist its own species in that survival. For example, you never in the animal kingdom see a lion hunt food for a tiger, because that's not a part of his species. Same organism, different species. The only time where you see an actual species unite with the species that's not of self and kind is in the human or the human animal kingdom. Sorry. So what we want to do is we want to address certain information that will relate to us being able to understand how we can actually live within the bounds of these particular laws. And what happens is we are fed information which psychologically and behaviorally cause us to actually dysfunction based on not having the proper information, which not having the proper information threatens the number one axiom, survive. So when people are trying to disseminate certain information to us as far as religion or economics or politics that causes us to have fundamental misconceptions of reality, all of those things work to do what? Hinder our survival. So there is something that's called psychobehavioral antibioexymatic dysfunction. Now, inside of the community that um, we are a part of in the conscious community, or more specifically, the Wu Sabat or the NUWAUPIAN community, we call that the spell. Only thing the spell is saying is that psychologically and behaviorally, you are dysfunctioning and you are thus threatening your survival. So in any event, what needs to take place is researching specific information that's relative to us being able to make the proper decisions so that we can continue and aid our survival. When people used to ask me when I used to run classes out in Charlotte, hey, Messiah, why is it that you need to know so much? Or what's the point of learning all this information? The purpose of learning all of this information through our research is so that we can make the best decision to continue our survival. So when we learn chemistry and how the body works, combining with different elements and chemicals, what that's telling us how to do is live within the bounds of what actually makes the body live or last or survive longer. When we're learning information about economics and how to properly deal with the natural resources on the planet as it relates to us as a human species, what we're learning is how we can actually use these natural resources to continue our survival. Everything is based on our survival and the survival of self and kind. Most people inside of the religious world have allowed themselves to be misguided by myth and illusion. For example, if you was to go and ask a religious person before you start questioning them on the factual basis of the religious knowledge, is there ever a time that we shouldn't think logically? The first thing that they're going to tell you is, no, you should always think logically. Yet, once when they answer this question, when you go into the Bible, you find that most of the passages, the way they're being explained and expounded on as they're being disseminated, violates that very concept, reasoning, right? And so whenever your reasoning becomes dormant, that's a state of hypnosis. Whenever you interpret information from a more emotional standpoint than a rational standpoint, we call that a spell, or what we call psycho-behavioral antibioenzymatic dysfunctioning. And the reason why it's called psycho-behavioral antibioenzymatic dysfunctioning is because psycho deals with the mind, or the thoughts or thinking. Behavioral deals with the conduct or actions. Anti means to go against. Bio is short for biological, and axiom is naturally stated laws. So to say that one has psychobehavioral antibioenzymatic dysfunctioning means you have thinking and conduct that goes against the laws of nature. So we gotta wake up, family. This is just a short video just to show you how we need to start redressing ourselves psychologically and behaviorally by first accepting the fact that survival is number one. That's the key. We must live in the bounds of survival. And in order to live within the bounds of survival, you must be properly educated. Another example that I used to give people is to basically show them the importance of proper information, as we call it, right knowledge, is things to make computers right now were here when the Neanderthals and the Cro-Magnons was here, but they didn't have computers. The things that it take or the natural resources that it took to be able to build cars were here when the Neanderthals and the Cro-Magnons was here, but they didn't have cars. All of these things basically took time for that particular species back then, the Homo erectus, to evolve into the Homo sapien, a more intelligent being, so that we could be able to utilize these things properly and do what? Continue our survival. If you go back in time and you ask the average person, hey, what made the dinosaurs extinct? Oh, 17,250,000 years ago, a meteorite shower when a sandstorm came, threw up so much debris, blocked the sun out, plants was dying, and they starved to death, or they basically just died off. That's not technically what killed them. What killed them is they lacked the ability to reason. Reason gives us the ability to adapt to our environment so that we can continue our survival. So when the meteorite shower and sandstorm came, they didn't know how to build underground bunkers. They didn't know how to can food and stash food. Everything that nature gave them to survive was no longer relevant when the actual meteorite and sandstorm came. So basically the point is we must be able to use our reasoning. Now, I'm not saying that emotions is not necessary, because it's insane for a person to believe that you could be a human and not feel or not have human emotions. But the way that we internalize information needs to be more rational than emotional. Not to say that the emotions don't play a role. What I'm saying is we need to think more rational than emotional, because what happens is if you turned off all of your reasoning and only used your emotions, you're only guided by feeling. And you can feel something and be 100% wrong. As well as if you turned off your feelings and you only use the reasoning, then now everything that happens may not add up to being rational. You may need your emotions to feel your way through it. And therefore, there must be a balance. Most people in the ancient societies, and Buddhism also teaches this, you need a middle course. You don't need to lean to one extreme, rational, or to the other extreme, emotional. You need to know how to stay in the middle course. And the way to basically do that is to educate yourself on the things that will have us live up to these three laws. So that's it for this video, family. Don't forget, subscribe. If you like this video, hit me up in the comment section. If you have any questions about this video, again, hit me up in the comment section. I'll be glad to answer your questions.